Of the top dozen news networks in the United States, only Fox has an alternative view. The other channels speak with one voice. They're united on every issue, every time. They're in almost perfect sync with the priorities of the Democratic Party. The position of corporate media across the country this week has been very simple. There was no voter fraud. The New York Times, once the paper of record, declared that as fact this morning across the entire front page. Look at this banner headline. Well, Brian Stelter has since left the New York Times. He's now the House eunuch at CNN, announcing proclamations from his tiny king, Jeff Zucker. He takes his talking points, though, still from Media Matters.
An explosive new story from Ben Smith from the New York Times reports that Tucker Carlson cozies up to the liberal media frequently, the exact cohort of journalists he rails against nightly on his insanely popular show on Fox. I'm Caroline Johnson. Thanks for being here.
It's about decency, cries the eunuch. We must have decency.
That's right, the right-wing provocateur / cable news stalwart is far closer to the liberals in the media than he would have his audience believe. Carlson on his show frequently criticizes journalists, whom he often identifies by name and portrays as part of a liberal plot to discredit former President Donald Trump, his supporters, and the Republican Party. The attacks have provoked waves of threat and harassment against journalists. He recently described those journalists as, quote, cringing animals who are not worthy of respect. Michael Wolff, the author of 2 books about the Trump administration, says in the article, quote, I know this because I know what he has told me. While this is surely an indictment against the conservative media figure, it's just as important that we take to task those liberal journalists who are in effect doing the same thing he is. In other words, if people are outraged that Carlson is talking to those he constantly rails against, shouldn't we be just as concerned that the liberal media figures we trust and hold in high esteem are getting tips from a white supremacist who makes his money off of demonizing those most oppressed in our society? As Jacob Jarvis writes in Newsweek, Carlson's notoriety, nowadays a key measure of success, depends in no small part on the outrage he regularly elicits from liberals. They provide him with the spotlight he craves and the ammunition for his rhetoric. This leads to an interesting point in this video itself. The truth is that the media, the left media, is complicit in elevating Carlson's stature. For example, the progressive political group Move On recently sent out fundraising emails focused on Carlson's popularity and the size of his audience, calling for donations to fight back against him. And we have to ask ourselves, wouldn't our donations go much farther if we were giving that money to those who needed it most? Getting Tucker Carlson off the air would be great, but think of how much farther that money would go in the hands of grassroots organizations that work towards helping the exact people Carlson demonizes. Another Democrat using Carlson to fundraise is Representative Ted Lieu. Ted Lieu represents one of the strongest leaning Democratic areas in Los Angeles, democratically held since 1993, and which went Democratic by 19 points in the elections of 2020. Lieu also isn't up for re-election until 2023, so maybe he should have pointed donations to immigration groups in his own districts. Make no mistake, Tucker Carlson is a dangerous white supremacist whose words, seen by millions of people every night, have and will continue to seriously and detrimentally affect the opinions of millions of Americans. The power he wields is astonishing, and his behind-the-scenes maneuvering with the very people he makes money off criticizing is gross. But we in the liberal media are also complicit in elevating his voice and using his clips to stir outrage among our own, only leading to his further entrenchment in our media sphere. Maybe if liberals stopped using Carlson for their own gain, his popularity would decline. Wouldn't that be nice? Thanks so much for watching.